Picture this. It is 1967. You are a former British Army major. You are bored, you are broke, you have a boat, a big personality, and absolutely nothing to lose. And one afternoon you sail out into the North Sea, climb onto an abandoned rusty military platform 7 miles off the coast of England, plant a flag, and say 4 words that will change your life forever. This is my country. Not as a joke, not as a stunt, not as a cry for attention, as a completely serious declaration of national sovereignty. And here's the part that should be impossible. It worked. Britain looked at what you did, consulted its lawyers, checked its maritime law, argued about it in Parliament, and came to the conclusion that there was absolutely nothing it could legally do to stop you. You had just accidentally and completely legally bought yourself a country. His name was Paddy Roy Bates, and this is the most insane true story you have never heard. He was not a philosopher. He was not a political theorist. He was not someone who had spent years contemplating the nature of sovereignty and national identity. He was a pirate radio broadcaster. In the 1960s, Britain had a problem. The BBC had a complete monopoly on radio broadcasting. There was one station. It played what the BBC decided it would play, and what the BBC decided it would play was, by almost universal agreement, completely terrible. So a group of entrepreneurs had a brilliant idea. If you broadcast from international waters, from ships anchored beyond the 3-mile limit where British law stopped applying, you could play whatever you wanted and Britain couldn't touch you. Radio Caroline, Radio London, Radio Essex. Millions of British teenagers listening illegally on transistor radios hidden under their pillows. Paddy Roy Bates was running Radio Essex from a platform called Knock John, about 4 miles off the coast of Essex. He was good at it. He was loud, charismatic, and completely fearless. And then in 1967, Britain passed the Marine Broadcasting Offences Act, which made pirate radio illegal within British territorial waters. Knock John was inside the 3-mile limit. Bates would have to move or shut down. He chose to move. 7 miles off the coast of Suffolk sits a structure called Ruff's Tower. It was built during World War II as an anti-aircraft platform, a concrete and steel fort sitting on 2 hollow legs above the surface of the North Sea, bristling with guns to shoot down German aircraft attacking Britain from the east. When the war ended, the British military abandoned it. Not sold, not demolished, just abandoned. Left out there in the North Sea with the seagulls and the rust and the North Sea wind. Crucially, and this is where Bates's story gets legally extraordinary, Ruff's Tower sat in international waters, beyond the 3-mile limit where British law applied. In 1967, Paddy Roy Bates sailed out to Ruff's Tower, climbed up, looked around at the rust and the seagulls and the cold gray North Sea in every direction, and decided this was his, not for a radio station, for a country. On September 2nd, 1967, his wife Joan's birthday, because Paddy Roy Bates was that kind of man, he declared Ruff's Tower to be the sovereign nation of Sealand. He was its prince. His wife Joan was its princess. His son Michael was its prime minister. He wrote a constitution. He designed a flag, red and black with a diagonal stripe. He created a national motto. He commissioned a national anthem. And then he sent letters to every government on earth, informing them of Sealand's existence and requesting diplomatic recognition. Most governments did not respond. Some governments responded to say that Sealand was not a country. Britain looked at its lawyers again, looked at the maritime law again, looked at the fact that Ruff's Tower was 7 miles offshore, outside its territorial waters, and arrived at the same conclusion it had arrived at before. There was nothing it could legally do. The first crisis came in 1968. A Trinity House vessel, a British government ship responsible for maintaining navigational buoys, came to do routine maintenance on a buoy near Sealand. Bates's son Michael, defending what he considered to be Sealand's territorial waters, fired warning shots at the vessel, not at the people, at the water near the boat. Warning shots in Britain. Michael Bates was arrested and brought before a British court on firearms charges. The judge considered the case, examined the law, and then did something extraordinary. He ruled that since the incident had taken place outside British territorial waters, The British court had no jurisdiction over anything that had happened there. Michael Bates walked free, and Paddy Roy Bates had just received something more valuable than diplomatic recognition. He had received a legal precedent. A British court had effectively acknowledged that what happened on Sealand was outside British jurisdiction. A country that cannot be touched by its nearest neighbor's legal system is, by almost any practical definition, a country. Bates went home and printed more passports. But then things got truly, magnificently insane. In 1978, while Paddy Roy Bates was away from Sealand on business in England, a man arrived. His name was Alexander Achenbach. Achenbach was a German businessman who held a Sealand passport because Bates had been selling them, and who had decided that he wanted Sealand for himself. He arrived with a helicopter and a team of armed men. And while the Prince of Sealand was in England, Alexander Achenbach staged a full military coup of a sovereign nation with a total area of approximately 550 square meters. This is a sentence that should not be possible to write, and yet, Achenbach's men took Michael Bates hostage, secured the platform, and declared Achenbach the new head of state of Sealand. Paddy Roy Bates heard about this in England. He did not call the police. He did not call a lawyer. He did not file a diplomatic complaint. He hired a helicopter, assembled a team of men, flew back to Sealand, and personally retook his country by force. In a military operation that lasted approximately 15 minutes, Achenbach was captured. His men were captured. Bates held them all on Sealand as prisoners of war. He then released all of them, except Achenbach, who held a Sealand passport and was therefore, under Sealand's law, a Sealand citizen who had committed treason. Bates put Achenbach on trial for treason against a country with a population of roughly 5 people. Germany, a real country with millions of people and an actual government, sent a diplomat to negotiate Achenbach's release, which means a real country's foreign ministry sent an official representative to negotiate with a man on a platform in the North Sea about the treason trial of one of their citizens. Paddy Roy Bates received this diplomat, heard the request, and pointed out that since Germany had sent a diplomat, Germany had effectively given Sealand the closest thing to official diplomatic recognition it had ever received. He then released Achenbach as a gesture of goodwill and issued a decree forbidding Achenbach from ever returning to Sealand. Here is the thing about having your own country. The possibilities are genuinely extraordinary. Paddy Roy Bates was not stupid. He understood that Sealand's value was not in its size, 550 square meters of rusty concrete, or its location, 7 miles offshore in one of the most miserable stretches of ocean in the world. Its value was in what it was, a jurisdiction completely outside every existing legal system. In the 1990s, a company called Haven Co. approached Sealand with a proposal. They wanted to build a data center on Sealand, a server facility that would host websites and data that other countries were trying to censor or shut down. Because if your servers were on Sealand, they were outside the jurisdiction of every country that might want to take them down. Freedom of information, freedom of speech, freedom from government interference, all available for a hosting fee. It was, in theory, the most brilliant business idea in the history of the internet. Haven Co. invested millions of dollars, ran fiber optic cables, installed server equipment, launched with enormous fanfare, and then slowly, quietly collapsed. Because running internet infrastructure on a rusting platform in the middle of the North Sea with a diesel generator and a population of 5 turned out to have some practical limitations that the business plan had not fully accounted for. The servers went down whenever the generator needed maintenance. The maintenance crew had to be helicoptered in. The helicopter was expensive. The diesel was expensive. The North Sea weather was extremely unimpressed with everyone's business plans. Haven Co. shut down in 2008, but the idea had been real, and the idea had been brilliant. And for a brief moment at the turn of the millennium, the world's most unlikely country had been home to the world's most radical internet infrastructure. Sealand also had stamps. Sealand stamps, issued by the Sealand Post Office, which was Paddy Roy Bates sitting at a desk. Sealand had coins. Sealand had banknotes. Sealand had noble titles. For a fee, you could become a lord or lady of Sealand, and the Bates family would send you a certificate and a very official-looking stamp. Thousands of people bought Sealand titles. Tens of thousands of people bought Sealand passports, which led to the next problem. The Sealand passports that Bates had been selling began appearing in places that Paddy Roy Bates had not anticipated. In the hands of criminals, arms dealers, money launderers, people who needed a passport from a jurisdiction that didn't officially exist and therefore couldn't be verified by any immigration database on Earth. Sealand passports were being used to commit crimes across Europe. Bates immediately canceled all outstanding Sealand passports and stopped selling them. But the damage was done. Thousands of fake Sealand passports were already in circulation. In 1997, the Spanish police uncovered a counterfeiting operation that had produced over 150,000 fake Sealand passports. 150,000 for a country with a population of 5. In June 2006, a fire broke out on Sealand. Not a small fire, a serious fire that gutted sections of the platform and caused significant structural damage. The 2 people on the platform at the time were evacuated by helicopter by the British Coast Guard, which created an interesting diplomatic moment, since Britain was rescuing people from a country it had never recognized. They rescued them anyway, because people were on fire, and that takes priority over geopolitical principle. The platform was repaired. Sealand kept going. Paddy Roy Bates died in 2012 at the age of 91. He was buried on the English mainland, because Sealand's concrete deck does not accommodate burials, which is one of the more practical limitations of founding a country on an old military platform. His son Michael took over. Michael Bates is the current Prince of Sealand. The population fluctuates between 0 and 3 depending on whether anyone is there doing maintenance. The flag still flies. The website still sells noble titles, Lord, Lady, Baron, Baroness, for prices ranging from $30 to $200. You can buy one right now. You would be a noble of a country that has existed for over 50 years, survived an armed coup, hosted the world's most radical internet infrastructure, issued passports to arms dealers, had its citizens tried for treason, received a German diplomatic mission, been repeatedly ignored by Britain, and is currently staffed by approximately nobody. It is the most extraordinary thing that has ever technically been a country. Here is the question that Sealand raises that nobody quite knows how to answer. What is a country? It sounds like a simple question. It is not. The standard definition, the Montevideo Convention of 1933, says a country needs 4 things: a permanent population, a defined territory, a functioning government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states. Sealand has all 4. The population is small, the territory is tiny, the government is one family. The relations with other states are mostly one-sided, but technically, legally, by the actual written definition. Sealand qualifies. No major country has officially recognized it, but no major country has officially disproved it either. Britain has never legally challenged Sealand's status. It has simply ignored it with the particular British determination that comes from not wanting to have a conversation that might produce an inconvenient answer. And in that silence, in the space between Britain's ignoring and Sealand's insisting, a rusty concrete platform in the North Sea has been a country for over 50 years. There is a moment in the history of Sealand that stays with you. In 1968, after the British court ruled it had no jurisdiction over Sealand, Paddy Roy Bates stood on his platform in the North Sea and looked at England 7 miles away. He could see it from there on a clear day. The country that had built his platform, abandoned his platform, tried to shut down his radio station, prosecuted his son, and then watched a court tell them they had no power over any of it. 7 miles. That is the distance between following the rules and making your own. 7 miles of cold gray water between a man with a flag and the most powerful legal system in Europe. And the most powerful legal system in Europe blinked first. Paddy Roy Bates wanted a radio station. He ended up with a country. He did not plan it. He did not study for it. He did not have a theory or a philosophy or a grand political vision. He just sailed out into the North Sea one day, looked at an abandoned platform and thought, that looks like mine. And because he refused, absolutely and completely refused, to accept that it wasn't, it became his. There is a title available on the Sealand website right now. Lord, Lady Baron, Baroness, $30. And somewhere in the North Sea, on a rusty platform that should not be a country, and technically is, the flag is still flying. It has been flying for over 50 years. And nobody, not Britain, not Germany, not the United Nations, not anyone, has figured out how to make it stop. And somewhere out there in the cold gray North Sea, 7 miles from England, on a rusty old platform that one stubborn man with a boat and a flag decided was his, a flag is flying. And a country, improbable, ridiculous, magnificent, endures.